Vajradhara Sumatimu Nishasane Uta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumatimu Nishasane Uta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Pakyuke kudan dagi lu, pakyuke sundan dagi nga, pakyuke tukdan dagi yi, yerme çikto çingi lu. Makyuke kudan dagi lu, makyuke sundan dagi nga, Tudan dagi yerme çıktı cingi lo Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Şakya Muni Shindula Mikte Ulvaraki Drugunamda Shinla Cheparashu Yedam Guru Radnam Ralakam Niryatayami Sangye Chedan Sogi Chanam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola pinchra sangye druparash Sangye chedan tsogi chonamla Chancho pardo dani kyapsuchi Dagi jinso gibe sonamki Drola pinchra sangye druparash Sangye chedan tsogi chonamla Dani kyapsuchi, dagi jinso gibe sonamgi, drola pinchre sangue druparesho. Nel Buddha, nel Dharma e nel Sangha prendo rifugio fino all'illuminazione. Con la pratica della generosità
Good morning. In our lives, there are two main energies or strengths, energies that bring us to do everything that we do. These two energies are called in many different ways. But one way that they're called is this energy of aversion and attraction. Normally, when we do something, it's because we want to avoid something, or it's because we want to get something. Normally we have these two different attitudes that push us and pull us. Then there's a third one, which is neutrality. But normally most of our choices, our actions, that which gives us the strength to act is um, i- is is determined by this energy of attraction or aversion. And what happens is we all normally, we need stimulation. We need to be stimulated to do something. Otherwise, our tendency would be to stay where we already are. To do something different, we need some kind of stimulation, something that gives us energy to do that thing. If we look in historically speaking, or even, you don't even need to look in the past, just look at our own lives, the present, our present, but the past is also like this. When someone wants to obtain something from someone else, to get something from someone else, when someone wants someone to act in a certain way, or wants someone to do something, normally, what are the tools that are used? Attraction and aversion. So like, if you do this, you're going to get that, or this and the other, or I can try to influence you through an incentive, or through fear. So if you do this, this is going to happen. If you don't do this, this, that, and the other is going to happen. Look, there's this problem, or there's this, etc., etc. If we see this happens within the family, on a social level, a political level, even on a religious level, in many different aspects, we have these two types of influences, these two kinds of energies that push us to do what we do. And on the other hand, when there's someone who wants to direct us, the strength, the energy that they use to direct our actions, or they use this energy of attraction. So what are the positive results, for example, that you could get by doing this, that, and the other? Or the energy of aversion, saying, is kind of like fear. If you don't do this, this is going to happen. If you want to avoid this negative aspect, etc. There are these two aspects. Someone could say, well, I want to go beyond this. But in this moment, that's where you are. We're here. We're in this system. If we observe our lives, we work based on these two energies of aversion and attraction. And if we asked ourselves, but why? Why am I not a Buddha? Why am I not a being of peace and balance and satisfaction? Why am I still, tormented by my own problems and fears and anger and fear, etc.? Why am I not a being, a pure being? A Buddha means to have developed one's own positive aspects to their maximum, and to have rid oneself completely of these so-called mental defilements. But why am I not there yet? The first answer is because we don't want it. In the sense that, you tell me, how many of you wake up and say, today I need to reach enlightenment. I've got to do it. How many of us do we wake up in the morning, and during the day our absolute priority is to go beyond all our mental defilements and get out of this cycle of samsaric suffering to help other beings? How often is that present in our minds? I leave each one of you to answer for yourself. But as long as we put energy, for us to put energy in a certain direction, we need to desire it. There's no other way. We'll never put energy in a direction if we don't really, really want it. Not on a conceptual level, idealized level, but a deep and profound level. Like this, the sixth Dalai Lama said, NgalSo, who was the sixth Dalai Lama, was a bit outside the normality of the others. Let's say, first of all, it's a long story. I don't know. It's a time to open up this whole story, but anyway, this sixth Dalai Lama didn't want to follow the monastic lifestyle. He wasn't formally recognized until he was 25, about 25 years old. And this is the nice side of the story, but when the fifth Dalai Lama died, they were building the Potala Palace in Tibet, this enormous palace in Lhasa. And there was let's say an unstable political situation, and the death of the Dalai Lama would have brought conflict and more instability. So the so-called first the regent, the first minister, whose name was Gyatso, he hid the death of the fifth Dalai Lama, who was one of the most important people of Tibet. At the time there were no photographs or social media, and those who were actually able to see the Dalai Lama were very few. So he took a monk who looked a little bit like him and kind of kept him, let's say, a prisoner. But I mean, he slept he slept where the Dalai Lama would sleep, and ate his food, the best of Tibet, etc. And when the delegations from Mongolia and China would come, he was there and they would give him like a long life, pujas, etc. He did everything that the Dalai Lama should have done, but then the regent did everything that a Dalai Lama should be doing, and that went on for about 25 years. So for 25 years there was this it's as if the fifth Dalai Lama were alive, but he wasn't. His look-alike was representing him, and when at the same time there was the declaration, when there was the declaration of the death of the Dalai Lama, and at the same time there was the recognition of the reincarnation. There was also the recognition of the new Dalai Lama and the enthronement at the same time. But all of this to say that the sixth Dalai Lama, he didn't want to follow the political life as the king of Tibet, as the head of the religious head, and he was also a poet. And at the same time, he loved many, many women. So he had many girlfriends everywhere. Behind the Potala, even today, you can see houses. I don't know if they're still there, but I remember in 1994 you could still see them. Behind the Potala, there's this small village, and there's these houses that were painted yellow, and these were the houses of the girlfriend of the Dalai Lama, and the Dalai Lama would escape from the window to go to all these girlfriends who were in this village behind the Potala, and he wrote many poems, and in two poems, one addressed to a specific woman and another one directed to women in general, he said this phrase. He said, "If I desired enlightenment as much as I desire women, I would already be enlightened." And another said, "If I desired enlightenment as much as I desire you," and I don't remember the name, "I would already be enlightenment." But the point is, he was right, because when we are in love with someone or something, because you can also fall in love with something and not necessarily a person, or those who are also in love with themselves. But when someone has this passion, and I think we all, in one way or another, have had this experience of falling in love with a person, or, as I said before, or a place, or a job, an activity. There's so many things. But when there's passion, one doesn't measure one's effort. It's to say, one doesn't hold back. I mean, for example, when you're in love with someone, how many times a day do you think of someone you're in love with? I've heard someone answered me once, one time. It's just one time that just never ends. The point is that we do everything possible to be there, and all of our energy goes in that direction. And this passion is very, very important. This passion has a very strong energy. And in Buddhism, for example, maybe some people have heard that in Buddhism, desire is a mental defilement that should be eliminated. And I've heard people ask, well, how do you live without desire? And here we have a big problem of translation. It's not true that desire should be eliminated. Desire is unlimited desire, in the sense of projecting our happiness onto that which cannot sustain it. This makes us suffer, and that should be eliminated. But the energy of desire, of passion, of directing our mind towards something is fundamental in our spiritual path. The first quality that we need to develop along the spiritual path, which is translated, I don't want to say erroneously, but not even correctly, is like renunciation. The literal translation would be nevarjuna, which is the certainty of being able to emerge, which is passion. Because the word renunciation gives us this idea of sacrifice, of burden, of weight. So renunciation, what does that mean? Realized renunciation. It's like living without the things that I like, or I've developed renunciation, and so I don't drink this, I don't eat that, I don't have these kinds of relationships, I don't do that. I have developed renunciation, and it's often, and there's this idea of sacrifice, when instead what is meant is passion towards the freedom from samsara. Means have passion that I can reach a state of balance, of peace, of satisfaction. It's possible to go beyond selfishness and anger and hate and ignorance. It's possible to have love, patience, satisfaction, joy, stability, wisdom, and I want that. I want that more than anything else. That's passion. Because without this passion, without this desire, which is translated often, this is translated often as aspiration, to make the difference between a virtuous and non-virtuous desire. But often we just stay a little bit still. Because, where do we put our energy? We put our energy in what we want. That's it. So, we're taken by these two energies. Even if we look at historically speaking, I can speak for Buddhism, but I think it's the same pretty much for all religions. I was speaking to a priest, for example, who invited me to speak to his parish. And after speaking, I spoke to him a little bit. I said, I think in the Christian tradition there are different aspects that weren't originally dogmas, but once it becomes a mass religion, it's too complicated to explain to everyone the why and the how. So then it becomes a dogma, and he agreed. And if we see that very often in religions, how did they try to encourage people to abandon certain behavior and cultivate other behavior through fear and reward. If you speak like this negative thing is going to happen to you. If you speak like this, then it'll go well. Sure, to be able to promise you a reward after death is easier because I can promise you anything, but I'm not talking about Christianity. I'm talking about many religious traditions, even in Buddhism. So, but why does this happen? Because we work based on these two energies. Our nature, when we try to incentivize someone, we need to use these two tools. We don't really have much else. But when Buddhism came to Tibet, there was a very specific characteristic, a particular characteristic. When the Tibetan Buddhist tradition arrived to the West, the best of the best came to teach, and it wasn't transmitted as like a mass religion. The teachings that were transmitted and that are transmitted today are, let's say, for the elite, the religious elite. So those who had done already a long path of study and practice, and we have this great luck that the incentive that we have to direct our lives doesn't have to be an incentive based on fear or reward, but based on comprehension, on experience. Because if we look at Buddhist teachings from the beginning, at the end, we get to transforming our behavior, our way of thinking, our mind, our body, our speech. And to do that, what gives us this push? Or we go to fear and like threat and reward, which is a very basic level, and really quite is easier. It's much easier to threaten you or to push you with fear or reward, or it's much easier to do like that than to explain the how and the why of the whole path. It's much easier just to scare you a little bit. To manipulate people is just the easiest thing to do. We're not that intelligent. We are so easily manipulated. But what really works well, and what I believe is what works better, is a path of comprehension. It takes time, but it's what we're trying to reach through the Four Noble Truths. Understanding, using our reason, using our experience to better understand, what I should be afraid of, and where I should direct my desire, because both aversion and fear and this desire, these are going to direct And you're going to direct us. Yesterday we saw the first part, which has to do with fear. And at the end, what should we be afraid of in the end? Our own ignorance, our own selfishness, our own anger and envy, our own actions, like aggressive, violent, negative actions. This is what we should avoid, because that's what generates suffering. It's very important to see this, because as long as I don't feel a certain aversion or recognize that something as suffering, I won't try to avoid it. But it's something that we really need to understand. Why should I not lie? For example, why should I avoid using my speech in an aggressive way? Why should I not get angry? Why should I act in an aware and loving, respectful way? Not because if not, I'll go to hell. And again, this is not just about Christianity. There's many traditions that's like this. Even in Buddhism, there's a long description of the hells. And I personally believe that the hells exist, not as a place of punishment, but as a result of a negative interdependence. Something created by our own mind. But this opens up a whole new subject, because, there are hells that exist in the same world. There are people on this planet who live in an infernal situations, a continuous continuous suffering. But beyond this, the point is that it's important for us to understand what we should be avoiding, understand and really feel inside that anger is harmful, envy, jealousy, fear, arrogance, this feeling of superiority, this obsession with self-gratification and ignorance at the heart. I should be afraid of all of that and say, no, I can't allow myself these feelings, because it's really harmful and I don't want to suffer. It's like when someone gets angry, for example. I've seen this many times. We know that we shouldn't get angry, because in Buddhism, we repeat continuously that anger is not beneficial. We shouldn't get anger. But is it enough just to know? Then maybe it helps a little bit, but it doesn't resolve the problem. What happens when someone gets angry? One victimizes oneself. It's true that I shouldn't get angry, but if he hadn't said this, if that one hadn't done this, then I wouldn't have gotten angry. It's not my fault. And it's true that it's true. I shouldn't get mad. It's the wrong way, to behave, but it's your fault. Shantideva in the Bodhisattva this important text about 5-6 centuries ago said something like, what's more important for you, your inner peace or what other people think of you? And our rhetorical answer would be, inner peace. And then he answers, so that why do you lose it when someone speaks ill of you? Speaks badly of you. But if we recognized just how much, just how harmful anger was, and at that point we would generate the effort to avoid it. So my personal experience about this specific point was like the way I am, luckily, since I was a small child, I wouldn't get angry, but there was one time a few years ago where I was upset about a situation. I was angry, and I reacted in a kind of aggressive way. I raised my voice towards someone, and it lasted about 20 seconds. So that moment was short. So when I calmed down, I went on a walk right away because in the pit of my stomach there was just like a knot, and I said to myself, if to get angry for just a few seconds, less than a minute, getting angry like that left me this pain, this tension. Just imagine, I can imagine what it's like to be angry for a long time. And I said to myself, I cannot allow myself for this to happen again because I love myself. And I don't want this. I mean, if I put my hand in the fire and I burn my hand, the next time I get close to fire, I'm careful about not putting my hand there. Why? Because I felt the result and I'm afraid of that result. So one of the energies that helps us avoid certain behaviors is an ugly word to use, but it's fear. This thing I want to avoid, I can't allow myself. That's on the other hand, we have, what do I desire? Beautiful things, where do I want to go? This is really important. Because in our lifetime, we have experiences that are pleasurable and unpleasurable states. So we have tension and anxiety, but we also have experiences of well-being and joy and peace, etc. And this is what we want: satisfaction, etc. And so it's important for us to be clear about what is harmful and what is beneficial. If we don't have passion for this inside of us, then it will be difficult for us to direct our energy. So the first two noble truths that we saw yesterday have to do with recognizing what is harmful, what I should avoid, and where I should direct my aversion. And the next two have to do with what I should desire, which we're going to see quickly today, because to see them well, then we need at least a week. But let's try to see them just in a few words. When I was about 18 years old, I was in the monastery in India. I was studying Buddhist philosophy in a more detailed, profound way. And I fell into a kind of personal crisis. And the crisis I had was because I was there. I was dedicating my life to study, to study and practice of Buddhism, philosophy, etc. But I didn't have certainties. I didn't believe fully in the objective that I was following. The question I asked myself was, is it really possible to get out of this cycle of suffering of samsara? Is it really possible to reach a state of Buddhahood, of reach enlightenment? Call it what you will. I looked around and said, I don't know. I mean, is it possible? I mean, and then when I read Lama Tsongkhapa say, he talks about the first step that one needs to take to be able to get onto the path that takes us to enlightenment. I mean, it's just the first step. He says, after having meditated in that way, if no desire or no satisfaction, no aspiration for mundane pleasures, not even for an instant, and if day and night you direct yourself always towards the liberation of samsara, at that point the renunciation has been developed. And I just thought, well, let's just leave this here. Maybe in the past is possible. I mean, I'm sure that the masters of the past, like Lama Tsongkhapa, Gyaltsen Sapa, and Milarepa, were able. But in the times in which I live, looking around me, it seemed really difficult. For my good luck, I'm a slow person in the sense that before taking an important decision, I think about it several times. I reflect on it. I observe. And once I've taken a decision, it's taken. And to change, to change my mind again, I need to observe and reflect. I mean, it's something that happens inside myself. So when it's not that I had this crisis and then I just dropped everything. No, I took time. I spoke to different masters, among whom the Dalai Lama, Ganshin Rinpoche, my Geshe Tupten Rinchen, who is my philosophy master. So all three together really helped me understand. And in essence, above all, there's no state of enlightenment, of peace, of Buddhahood. We can call it in many different ways, but it's not possible to develop our qualities to their maximum potential and eliminate our own inner conflicts from one day to the next. It's a gradual process that takes time, a lot of time. This is one important point. There's some steps that one takes and doesn't necessarily have to go backwards, but it's a gradual process. When I spoke to my philosophy master, Geshe Tupten Rinchen, he said to me, "Do you believe that it's possible to diminish your anger through your behavior? I mean, is it possible to diminish this feeling of anger?" Yes. I've seen it in myself. I've seen it in other people who are close to me, that with effort, I mean, it's not easy, but with effort, we create new habits, change old habits. It's possible to diminish anger. One can diminish also jealousy and envy. Yes. Also, is it possible to love in a more wholesome, correct way, and then love more? Yes. What's the limit? The limit for anger, what is it? To not feel it anymore. The limit for love, what is it? Is to love unconditionally, regardless of who it is, go beyond one's own selfishness, things that I think are really possible. So if I can diminish anger, diminish envy, diminish fear, arrogance, diminish ignorance, what's the limit? Just to not have them anymore. And if I can develop my qualities like generosity and patience and love and respect, like gratitude, like enthusiastic effort, and the powers of realization, so correct discernment and wisdom, etc., what's the limit? To have them spontaneously, constantly, realize them fully. So it is possible to reach enlightenment, because what's not possible is to reach enlightenment from one minute to the next. So in the state I am now, that's never going to happen. But because we are interdependent beings, what does that mean? It took me about 2 years to put all these pieces together. But the point is, how can I say? What happens when one repeats a thought? At the beginning, maybe it's a difficult concept to understand, a little disconnected from us. So we hear it once, twice, 3 times. We start repeating it, then we start thinking that we believe in it, then we try to explain it to others. The more often we think about that, the more that concept becomes part of us. If there's a physical behavior that's a bit difficult to do at first. Maybe it's difficult to sit in a certain way or speak in a certain way or avoid the use of our speech in a certain way. But then we start putting some effort in it. Like, I can't use my speech in this way. What's going to happen? At the beginning, it's difficult. I repeat. Every once in a while, I make a mistake. But then gradually, I repeat, and then gradually it becomes easier. What happens when we start to do something that we know is not really positive? We do it a little bit here, we do it a bit there, and little by little. At the beginning, maybe there was a little bit of control, and then we lose that control. It becomes more familiar, and then it just becomes a habit. We are made of habits. The more we react, the more we act in a certain way, the more spontaneous and easier it is to behave like that. This is our reality. So it's possible to live in a balanced way, free from suffering in general, etc., free from this so-called all-permeating suffering, as we saw yesterday, and mental defilements, etc. It is possible. But to do that, we need to change inner habits that make us suffer, because the only way to understand that it's possible to get out of the cycle of samsaric suffering is to understand that, first of all, our suffering comes from ignorance, from selfishness, from anger, from dissatisfaction, etc. And understand that we are interdependent. Or if I direct my mind, my body, my speech in a certain way, gradually it's going to take that direction. It's going to transform itself. Be transformed. Because we are beings that are easily influenced. We're easily manipulated. Much more than we think. The point is, where do I want to manipulate myself? How do I want to? Who do I want to be? What direction should I be going towards? And the third noble truth, which is called the truth of cessation. Means, in simple words, to believe and understand that we can do it. Yesterday we used the metaphor of sickness. First, I need to be aware of being sick. Then I need to understand what the causes of the sickness, what are the causes of the sickness that are to be abandoned. And the third point is, I need to believe that I can get better. Because if I don't believe that I can be cured, will I do these difficult treatments and take this bitter medicine? For example, when there are people who have a bad sickness and choose not to follow a treatment. Why? Because they like being sick? Because they they want to be dependent on others, or is it because they don't believe that they can be cured? If one doesn't believe that they can be cured, they say, instead of putting all this effort into this difficult therapy and treatment, instead of doing that, I'm going to just try to live with the sickness I have in the best way I can, which follows, each case is separate, but there is some reasoning there. But the point is, I need to believe that I can be cured, and if I don't believe that I can be cured, I'm not going to put effort in this healing process. One of the problems I see, I don't know if problems is the right words, one of the difficulties I see in these modern times that we live in, on a personal level, but also on a familial level, also on the level of society. Very often we don't believe in something. We don't have a long-term positive objective, a utopia to follow. Instead, we kind of want to live well the moment, and let's look at society, for example. So now we have internet and Netflix and pizza, and so I don't really need to worry about a just society, or have a vision, a view, an idealized view of what I really would like for this society. This is something I see often. One criticizes the things that one doesn't like, but it's hard to find someone's dream. Even like in a family, often there are conflicts within a family, but often what is lacking is this idealized the view of how we want to be as a family. Do we want to help each other grow, be better, among all of us, etc. And even on a personal level, we spend most of our life trying to avoid suffering, obtain pleasures, without a view that is like mid and long term, or how I could be at the service of others. It's even more difficult to find. So the view that Buddha brought us is a long-term view, not short-term. Long-term that asks, who do I want to be? In what direction do I want to go? And it's fundamental to believe that, and I use the word utopia in the sense that, like, to desire something, to desire something that maybe in the immediate doesn't seem feasible, but long term it is. So once I was watching a documentary that was talking about some philosophers, and there was one part that talked about Nietzsche, and something he said that what touched me. Nietzsche talked about this last man. He talked about this modern man that has taken away his concept of God, but on the other side, he also reached a state where he didn't even have any desire that could transcend himself. He used the metaphor saying that the modern man looks at the stars, says how beautiful, but but doesn't put any effort to reach them, and says it's just better to just stay where he was, so to stay comfortably where he is. I think this is quite applicable to our reality of today. Like if we were to ask a very direct question using a term that we use in Buddhist teachings, if we were to choose a sure enlightenment in time, like with a tiring and difficult path, because changing our habits is not easy. So what would we choose between a sure enlightenment through a tiring path or a comfortable samsara right away? One would say, I want a comfortable samsara. So not conceptually speaking, but in our experiences, I just want to be fine. So if you tell me that I can be fine with, being, with me as I am, that's just enough. I don't know if that's clear, but it's important for us to go beyond. And when we talk about this state of enlightenment, it means to reach a state, an inner state of peace, of well-being, of stability, where no matter where we go, no matter with whom we find ourselves, we're fine. In other words, to be well with oneself and with others, independently of where we are, who we're with, what we're doing. It's very important for us to observe and reflect on what enlightenment is in a real way, and gradually develop this desire. We have to, in a certain way, flirt with enlightenment, develop this passion. And says, I want this, because it takes a lot of effort, and if you don't have this passion, that effort is just not going to come out. Imagine for a minute in our own lives. There are two ways that you can imagine this. You can first, let's do the opposite, and then we'll look at enlightenment. If we imagined our lives, but being able to just obtain what we want. In the past, I've always explained this using the example of the genie and the lamp. But let's just say, what do we want? What do you desire physically? Do you want to be different? Imagine how you'd like to be. You want to be taller, to shorter, thinner, or thinner or fatter, or a bigger nose, a smaller nose. If you're a woman, do you want to be a man? If you're a man, do you want to be a woman? I mean, just physically, how do you want to be? So, okay, fine, you got that. Materially, what would you like to have? So just think of a number and multiply it by 1,000, and you've got it. The people around you, who would you like to? Who would like around you? You can have all of that. And for work, do you want a certain kind of job, or do you not want to work at all? The house, your house. What do you want? Anything anything outside yourself, including your body. Just imagine all of that, and imagine being able to have it all. Imagine yourself in this context. But your traumas are still there. The fears. Inside of you, not much has changed. That your dissatisfaction, what's our experience with dissatisfaction? The more I have, the more I want. So it's as if we are ourselves as we are, and then we're living this marvelous external situation, but we're still us. On the other hand, the other possibility could be, your body is what it is. Your material situation is what it is. The people around you are the same. So it's all, it's all the same without adding or taking anything away. Leave all the problems, the way it is. But there's a fundamental difference here. We're satisfied. We don't come into conflict with anybody or anything. We're able to see the interdependence of everything, and we're able to see, the how and the why of everything around us. We have a state of great stability and balance. We're able to relate with everyone with affection and love. We're not taken by this game of attraction and aversion. We don't have fear or anxiety. We don't live with expectations about the future being the way we think it should be, and we're in harmony with our past. If we were to choose between the two, which one would we choose? The second one. But at this point, the question is, where do I put my energy? To get the first one or to get the second one? This is really important. So when we talk about Buddha, we look around at these images around us, the paintings, and there are images of Buddhas and the masters, the 84 Mahasiddhas, and many others. In the temple, we have the 1,000 Buddhas of this era. I mean, why are there so many different representations of Buddha and so many different representations of, like, for example, here, these 84 Mahasiddhas here that are represented? Because Buddha is not a god or a historical figure. Buddha Shakyamuni was, but Buddha is a state to reach, that we can reach. If there were a kind of advertising for Buddhism, they are testimonials to say, we can do it. But you can't buy it with money. You have to buy it with your conduct and meditation and effort. But it is possible. This is a fundamental point. To observe, recognize I can do it. Why can I do it? Because I'm interdependent. Everything that I do, say, or think conditions my future actions, words, and thoughts, and gradually I can condition myself to reach certain states. It's going to take time. Someone say, but it takes too long. And my answer is, well, what choice do you have? It's like saying, you need to wait 10 hours. It's happened, at the airport, traveling a lot. It's happened a lot, to miss flights. Once, for example, I was 13 years old, and I was coming back from Borobudur to India. I was by myself. I made a mistake with my flights. I spent, I spent more than 30 hours in the airport in Singapore, and I remember the feeling of like, I have a lot of time. Let's try to use it well. Because the point is that the time is that I need to wait, so I can spend the time complaining that I missed my flight and this person made this mistake, and there's not even a restaurant open, and there's only this hotel, the nearest hotel is just too expensive. I mean, I can spend my time complaining, or I can use that time doing something that brings me joy, that it's beneficial to me. I mean, it's a choice that we have. It's not that I'm there at the airport, that it's, I'm not there with someone torturing me, making me suffer. I have a free choice. I'm free to choose how I want to use my time and my thoughts, my speech. And life is like that. We choose where we want to direct ourselves. I still need to wait. That time still needs to go on. So it's better to spend that time doing something beneficial instead of doing something harmful to myself and others. So this path of familiarizing ourselves with virtuous aspects to becoming a better, more virtuous person, to grow along the path towards enlightenment does take time, but the alternative is just spending and wasting your time doing something stupid because we don't have this choice of, familiarize your mind with, familiarize your mind or don't familiarize your mind, transform yourself or not transform yourself. We're always doing that. Every time I get angry, I'm familiarizing myself more with anger. So the more I get angry, the more angry I will become. Every time I complain, I'm familiarizing myself with dissatisfaction, with this act of complaining. So it is a long path. But in the meantime, I'm here. And I'm living. I need to go on. So I'd better live in a virtuous way that brings me something, and to go in this direction. It's fundamental to look inside ourselves and say, I can do this. That same faith that we can have in our own Guru, in Buddha, we should have it for ourselves. We should have it in ourselves. Like I've said many times, the only reason why Buddha transmitted what he did, why our masters like Rinpoche, Lama, and many others, why they taught us so many things, is because they believe in us. They believed in us, and they believe that we can do it. So at the minimum, I have faith in. So I have faith in Rinpoche. Rinpoche has faith in me, and so I should have faith in myself. I trust Rinpoche. So it's like this, that I have faith. I don't believe I can do it, but you think I can, and I believe in you. So at least I'm going to try. But the reality is we can do it because we're interdependent. Because we work based on its interaction of thoughts and words and actions of every moment that we live. So from this, we go on to the fourth point. Each one of these points we could spend days. But we don't have a lot of time today. The fourth point, which is called the truth of the path. The question is, okay, it's possible to be happy. It's possible to reach the so-called enlightenment, Buddhahood. But what do I need to do to get there? Because I don't want to suffer, and I understand that suffering is not from something outside, but from how I live this context. And I understand that it's possible to be well. I need to develop myself inside, and not project onto something outside, which would be just an illusion. Just to summarize what we said yesterday, normally we think that to be happy we need three different things: to obtain everything we want, avoid everything we don't want, and to never be separated from what we like. And if someone asked me, would that be enough for you? And I'd say, oh yes, possibly. Maybe every day I could just update. We need to be able to update too, because okay, you can have everything you want and avoid everything you don't want. But that's just for this moment, but tomorrow we change our minds. This is also a big trap. If someone says, okay, I give everything you want and I take away everything you don't want, but tomorrow am I going to want the same things? I mean, how often has it happened that there's something we didn't like at a certain point we like, or maybe something we want for such a long time, and then at a certain point we don't want that thing anymore. I mean, this happens too. I don't know how much we can trust our own desires and aversions, which is it's just an illusion. So Buddha explains to us that we suffer not because we can't have what we want, but because we don't have what that we're not able to live situations in a harmonious and mature way, and because we're not able to perceive the impermanent nature of reality, and we suffer when things change because we relate to impermanence in an unhealthy way. So what should I do to be fine with myself and with others? And the last ultimate analysis, I need to get rid of my ignorance and develop wisdom. But we talk about the path and what we need to do. The path is not made up of an opposition to negative aspects. It's not made up of eliminating jealousy and anger and fear and ignorance. But it's made up of developing wisdom, developing love, developing respect, gratitude, etc. It's like if I get into a very dark place and I say, I don't like the darkness here. I want to eliminate the darkness. What's the only way to eliminate the darkness is to bring in light. I can try. You can't take away darkness. I need to bring light. If we see inside that there's dissatisfaction, we need to direct ourselves towards satisfaction. If we recognize that there's a lot of anger, then we need to develop patience and love. It's not enough to say, anger is so bad, I shouldn't have any anger, I'm so bad because I have so much anger. That's just not going to resolve anything. It's important to recognize our mental defilements as mental defilements. It's important to recognize that which is harmful as something harmful. That, yes, but the path is about developing qualities, not about opposing negative aspects, and much less with a sense of guilt. I say this because often I see people say, I'm so bad because I get angry, or I shouldn't do this, or I shouldn't be like that, etc., etc. But, set aside what you shouldn't do for a minute, and direct your energy towards what you should be doing. Because when we put energy into what I should be doing, naturally the other one changes. The path, mostly, there are three qualities that we should develop. They're summarized in these three qualities, and each one of these qualities, the path to develop each one is divided into three parts. The three tools that we can use. The main qualities that we should develop are called the three principal aspects of the path, which are love towards oneself, love towards others, and a correct view of reality. These are the three fundamental points, three aspects to develop. So if we asked ourselves, I want to follow Buddhism, I want to follow Buddhist teachings, I want to get out of samsara, I really want to help all beings reach enlightenment, etc. What do I need to do? I need to love myself, love others, and have a correct view of reality. Loving oneself starts from a very simple principle, which is if we take how we are now, our knowledge, what we are now, without, waiting, without waiting to become, the geshes, with the doctorate in Buddhist philosophy. But if we say, okay, what are the things I should abandon? What are the behaviors that I know I should cultivate? What do I know is good for me? What do I know is bad for me? So take that commitment to cultivate what's beneficial and eliminate what is negative. This is a first step. It doesn't require anything transcendental here. I mean, just say, this is good for me. I'm going to do this. This is bad for me. I'm not going to do it anymore. That's full stop. Physically speaking, verbally, and mentally. But we need to start with our body to get to our speech and then to our mind. And one could say, oh, but what's important is to change our mind. Why don't you start with changing the way you speak? Because you'll never be able to direct the mind if you're not able to direct your way of speaking. Because our speech is an extension of our thought, and it's easier to say, I want to kill you, but I'm going to smile. But at least I start with the smile and not saying something negative against you. I've not gotten to the final point, but once I'm able to direct my speech and my body, then I can direct the mind. But let's start with the physical and verbal behavior, conduct. So this first step is to gradually recognize more and more what is beneficial and what is harmful. Like his first teachings that were transcribed and then transformed into the book Self-Healing 1, Rinpoche would said, you should recognize who are the real and false friends. I mean, there are some things that we think are our friends, but are bad for us. And here, these are teachings from 1987, 1986. Anyway, Rinpoche was, at that time, was using the example of coffee. You think that coffee is a friend, but in reality is an enemy because it's harmful. You take, how wonderful your coffee, how much I want it, but it's bad for you. So it's important to be able to distinguish between what is beneficial and what's harmful. I personally don't drink coffee because when I was a child, I remember all the discussions between my parents who wanted to stop drinking coffee because Rinpoche told them it was bad and they weren't able to stop. So I said to myself, why should I ever start? I tried once. I thought it was horrible. My mom drinks it without sugar. I tasted it. I said, oh, I'm not going to try again. Because why should I start something? Why should I start something that is bad for me and it would be difficult to stop? That was my reasoning. And then I started using other examples because this example is really tough, between Italy and Brazil. This is the first step. If something hurts me, is harmful for me, it's even if it's pleasurable, because often the poison has a good taste, but I should have the maturity to be able to look a little bit past the palm of my hand. It's like the food that we eat. I mean, how do we choose our food? Is it in relation to the first 5 centimeters? First moments of taste, and the aspect and the look and the smell of it, or the function of that food in our body, and then as a consequence also our emotions. So even from this we see so much. So food is an excellent example. There's something that's bad for me, for example. Something is bad for me, but has a good taste, you know. But what's more important for me, that momentary good taste, or to avoid suffering? Because one of our ignorances, when we talk about the causes of suffering, ignorance is seen as two types. There's the ignorance of not seeing this relationship between cause and effect, and then the ignorance of not seeing the interdependence of phenomena. The first one is this one, like what we live today, this present, is not a result of the present. The present is a result of all the interactions and the choices that were taken in the past. That manifest in the present, but it's a result of the past. But we're not able to connect one thing with another. So even now, what I do today gradually is going to bring me a result in the future. You know, with tomorrow or in 10 years, but when we look a little bit long term, at that point we should say, okay, the taste is good, but it's bad for me, so I'm not going to eat it. I don't like it, but it's good for me, so I'm going to take it. It's not that hard. It's not impossible. But I think eating is a really great example. If I'm not able to avoid eating something, just eating something that's bad for me, just I don't want to discourage anyone, but imagine how hard it would be then to change the more difficult, more deeper habits inside. But if we start with food, by avoiding what's bad for us and eating what's good for us, that helps us familiarize ourselves with this act of love towards ourselves. This is important. After this, there are the ways I speak, my behavior. I don't know. I mean, for me, it's really hard to wake up early in the morning, but it's good for me. I remember with food, for example, there are things I stopped eating because they were harmful, and then and I'd say, oh, okay, maybe every once in a while, so like I ate something I know I shouldn't have eaten. For 4 days I wasn't feeling well. I mean, nothing terrible, but I paid the price afterwards. And life is like this. You have that little fight. Okay, so you released your tension, but how much do you have to pay for that? Or how about when you have that thought and you have to say it because you're just not able to bite your tongue? Say it, and then how much energy is going to be necessary to set things right again? A lot. So look a little bit beyond. The first pass is to love oneself, avoid what is harmful, and do what is beneficial. It's simple. It's not easy, but simple. And as we have more clarity about what is harmful, we keep avoiding that, and when we realize the things that are beneficial, we do those things, developing more and more clarity. So traditionally speaking, this first step is called renunciation. It's about renouncing to the causes of suffering and the causes of suffering. So going back to what's beneficial or negative. For example, I am intolerant to lactose, but I love mozzarella. So what do I like what do I want more? Do I want to, this good taste of something, or to feel physically better? So it's eliminating mozzarella. It's not a sacrifice, because my good state of health is much more important than the pleasure, the good taste of the mozzarella. So it's not a sacrifice. It's a positive choice. So our choice is, for example, in a relationship with another person. I want to have have a harmonious relationship, one of trust. Or do I want to just be able to say what I think when I think it? There are times when conflicts come out, inevitably, more or less, because we are where we are. So, but in that moment of conflict, I can choose, what's more important for me, to manifest, to show my point of view and just explode in that moment against this person, or cultivate a relationship of respect, affection, love. Because when I fight, the energy needed to fix that situation is just 10 times more. It's very tiresome. So we need to choose what's more important. This reminds me of a beautiful story, and I'll just tell it very quickly. It was the story of a meditator, a practitioner, meditator. And he was going into the forest, into his cave to meditate. And at a certain point, a monster arrived. It's like a cannibal monster. Anyway, this monster comes and he grabs him to eat him. And he takes him into his cave, and he ties him up. He sets the fire, because he was going to cook him and he was going to eat him. Eat the meditator. At a certain point, the meditator speaks to him, says, "Excuse me. Okay, you got me. You captured me. You tied me up. You're going to eat me. Fine, but I have a problem. I'm ready to die. But there's something I still need to do. I received teachings from my master, and I have not thanked him yet. So while you prepare the fire, I'm just going to go to my master and thank him." The monster looked at him and said, "Okay, it's going to be easy to just capture him again. So it's really strange. He's pure and sincere. Okay, go, but be quick about it." So he lets him go. He goes back to the village. All the people of the village who saw him, saw him being captured, said, "How'd you get away from the monster?" He says, "Oh no, I haven't. I'm not free. I'm just." He went to his master, he thanked him, and then he goes back to the monster, and the monster looks at him and says, "You're just really stupid. I gave you the possibility of escaping, and you're coming back to me." But then the good luck of this meditator was that the monster was curious. So the monster said, "What was so important what was so important?" And he said, "I needed to go and thank him for the teachings, that I had received." And the monster says, well, what kind of teachings were them? And the meditator says, "Well, you're not worthy of these teachings. No, just prepare the fire and kill me, And the monster says, "No, I really want to know." And then he says, no, just keep, you're not worthy. And then the monster says, "Well, why'd you come back?" And the meditator said, "Well, I gave you my word. And for many, many lives, I have not lied. And it's not for just this one life, not for saving this one life, that I'm going to break my word." After a while, the monster, he becomes, he's so curious and says, "Well, I really want to know about, I want to know these teachings from this master. And then finally he says, I'll tell you, but based on one condition, that you take the commitment to not hurt people anymore, and and we as a village will take the commitment to give you, to supply you with food, and so in the end, he shares he shares the teachings, and the monster becomes his disciple, his disciple, and the monster becomes like a protector of the village, and it's quite similar to the story of Saint Francis and the wolf. But in the story where he says, my word has such a strong value, so I'm not going to break my word. I'm not going to break my word, even if it means losing this lifetime, losing my life. So when we give value to something that goes beyond that present moment, that gives us enormous strength to realize this path. So we gratitude, love, stability, balance. I mean, we should have principles that no matter what happens, we should make sure that we don't break these or give up these values. So what do I want for myself? What then gives me also the conditions to be able to help others? Okay, then I do that, and I have a clarity of what's good for me, what's bad for me, and I act accordingly. And there's a world then opens up here, all the monastic vows, or all the practices of like moral conduct, and of the body, speech, and mind. I mean, there's also there's meditation to support all of this. This, the Hinayana path supports this greatly. And the first thing that the second path is to love others. To understand inside that, selfishly speaking, it's better to be altruistic, because at the end, when we open up our heart towards others and we allow ourselves to see them, we're really helping ourselves. So it's this path gradually helps us open up our hearts towards others. We shouldn't be kind and respectful and nice and loving towards others because we're good Buddhists. It's not that we should act lovingly towards others because I want to be compensated or I want to avoid something bad, but because I develop a deep feeling of love. The difference is clear, no? And then here's the whole path. It's the whole path on how to develop this sincere feeling of love towards others. And who are these others? Is my family, my friends, my co-workers, the people I see daily, the people that I don't know, but that I meet, other forms of life, in the animals and insects and in the nature, those who I help, but those who hurt me, those who, without any specific reason, maybe those with whom I have a karmic aversion, even though there's nothing tangible to explain that. So, and all beings, when we talk about developing love towards everyone, it's not an idealized love. I want all beings to be happy. Okay, except for those three who really bother me. No, we can't. That just doesn't work. All is made up of each individual. And when we're not able to open up our hearts to one, then we're closing ourselves up to everyone. Because there are two ways of loving. There's an altruistic and a selfish way, a limited and also or an unlimited way. Normally, our way of loving, we are limited because of our own self-gratification, because we don't love another if he doesn't nourish our self-gratification. Or we can love someone independently of how that person, who that person is, or how that person is to us. So opening up our hearts, putting ourselves to the service of others, helping each and everyone, the beings in nature itself, being human beings, non-human beings, have this deep desire for good for others. This is a process of gradually desiring that all are free from suffering in the same way that I want to be free from suffering, desiring the happiness of all beings, and like the same way that I desire to be happy. And then the third fundamental point, transmitted by Buddha, is this process of developing a coherent view of reality, called in many different ways, a shunyata, or the correct view of reality, emptiness, etc. Let's try to explain it in a few words. I'm trying to see where to begin here. When we observe an object that could really help here, like if we look at a flower, for example, there's some flowers over there, but you can use any object, but let's just imagine a flower, a plant, a person. We see the person or whatever object it is, the plant, and then we close our eyes. We open our eyes again, and we look at the object. What am I looking at, or who am I looking at? Is it the same person? Is it the same object, or is something changed? Without philosophizing, it's the same. If we start philosophizing, oh yes, we know that it's impermanent, and so their interactions change. But in our spontaneous way of seeing, we'd say it's the same. And now so instead of closing our eyes, we say goodbye, and then we see each other after a week. So say, oh, I'm gonna go meet that person. Who are we expecting to meet after a week? That same person or somebody else? That same person. And what about after 20 years? Who are we going to meet? That same person. Well, there's something that's just not working. So we see someone after a long time, and we say, oh, you've changed so much. And my answer is, what alternative did I have? Like something that makes me smile is like every 2 or 3 weeks I cut my hair. Every 2 or 3 years I shave my hair and my beard. And often people say, oh, you've cut your hair. But sorry. Why people ask this question? Because they expect to see to see the person that they saw the day before. So why doesn't this image match? So to not to make it too long, but even if a person is in constant transformation, so it's impermanent. It appears to us as being as if he were permanent, as if he were not transforming, and we expect to find the same. So appears to us as being permanent, and we grasp at that permanent aspect, and often we suffer when we realize it's not like that, when the person, the situation, the object doesn't correspond to our expectations or some mental image that we have. So we grasp at this permanent appearance, and we believe in this permanent appearance, and we act accordingly. So what does that mean? It means that this impermanent reality appears to us as being permanent, and we relate to that impermanent reality as if it were permanent, and with all the consequences that come about. This is ignorance. This is one of the forms of ignorance. And what would be the coherent, correct view is seeing that which is impermanent as being impermanent. This is wisdom. So it's not anything far away or mystic. It's impermanent. It's impermanent. You like it or not, it's impermanent. And to be able to perceive it, see it like that. Is that clear? So the correct view of reality in this case would be, I see an impermanent object, and I perceive it as being impermanent. I no longer have the appearance, or I don't grasp at the appearance of permanence. I don't relate anymore as if it were permanent. It takes a while, but this means having a coherent, correct view. Another example is, as I'm speaking, I've used this example many times. When we hear someone who's talking to us, what comes to our ears? Sound. How often has it happened that we've heard something and then we realize that we heard badly? I mean, this happens. I have some very clear examples where someone said something to me. It happened with Kut and Lama from America. We were together with this master, this monk. We were together in Indianapolis at the airport, and at a certain point he asked me a question. We were talking and we were speaking in Tibetan. He asked me a question, and I didn't answer because I thought it was so offensive what he was asking me, and I was just a little bit shocked. I didn't answer, and then he repeats the question. I thought, no, it's not possible. He can't be asking me that horrible thing. And then the third time he repeats this question. At that point, I'm about to answer. And luckily, as I was about to answer, with my lucky slowness, as I was about to answer, inside, I listened again to what he was saying. And I realized that he mixed up English and Tibetan, and I realized he was asking me if I wanted more juice or tea. It was just a really simple question, but I had understood it as being something totally different, because what comes to our ear is sound, and what we do with that sound is we attribute a meaning. And so for me, that was a very clear example. He had mixed up the languages, and he attributed one meaning and I attributed another. Luckily, I didn't react. And at the end, I understood what he meant to say, and everything's fine. And this happened also in other moments. How often does it happen where people actually do react when, to something? What people react to something that they misinterpreted, or that the person didn't mean to say, or that because when we speak, we try to transmit a worldview, we try to transmit feelings and concepts, but the other one receives sounds that they need to decodify according to their own worldview. It's difficult to transmit really what one wants to say. I don't know if it's ever happened to you, to spend a lot of time to so when you try to explain something to someone, and that person is really difficult, and it wasn't something difficult, but I was just kept trying. It was like an hour and a half. I was trying to transmit this idea to this person, but there was no understanding. I wasn't able to find the right way to communicate what I wanted to say. So what we perceive outside of us, the world that we see, and the sounds we hear, the images that we see, this and everything else that we perceive, it doesn't exist for us independently of ourselves. But in our daily life, when we see someone, now we see each other. Do I exist independently of your perception of me? I think so. And when we see each other, who do we think we're seeing? The other? I'm seeing you, or I'm seeing a reflection of me in you without philosophizing. I'm seeing you. But what I see is a reflection of me. I'm not able to see you independently of my own projections, my way of seeing, my experiences from myself. I'm not able to perceive anything independently of the filter of myself. I'm not able, and no one is, as long as you're not a Buddha. If you're not a Buddha, is that clear? If I'm nervous and I have my problems and I see someone, do I project my problems onto the other? Yes. And so what am I seeing? Am I seeing the other, or am I seeing a reflection of myself onto the other person? I'm seeing a reflection, but when I actually come into contact with another, do I have awareness of that? No, that's another form of ignorance. We see the world, and it seems as if everything existed in an independent, autonomous way, when instead our reality does not exist independently of ourselves. We live in an interdependent reality between object of perception and observer, and not in an autonomous, independent reality. We could complicate this a lot if we wanted to, but in just a few words, we live in a relative reality, but it appears as if it were absolute. And we relate to this world, being aware that this interdependence between this observer, me, and the world around me, the way we, and are we aware that our world around us is a reflection of myself? No, we're not aware of this. It's another form of ignorance. So when we talk about the correct view of reality, there are different aspects, and we could spend years in the monastery where I studied at Sera. There are 4 years, just like 11 months a year, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day dedicated just to this subject. At least, it's 4 years of study. It's not something, where in 20 minutes we can talk about it and we've got it. But the direction is about relating to a reality in a coherent way. So to get out of suffering and to reach a state of enlightenment or freedom from samsara, there are 3 things that we need to do. We need to love ourselves, we need to love others, and have a correct view of reality. So we should put our energy in this direction. So, but how do I do this? That's the question. And here there are 3 tools, 3 techniques, principally that we can use. Principally, the 3 main tools, and all the techniques that we have can be summarized in these 3. In Tibetan, it's called Ta Chö Gomsum. Tawa, Chipa, and Gompa. Vision, a view, conduct, and meditation. The first one is the view. What is the view? It's a conceptual part. Like how do I see the world? What is right? What is good? What is right for me? What is wrong? It's the aspects of view and knowledge. I mean, it goes beyond conceptual, but it starts from a conceptual aspects. What are the causes of suffering? What really is happiness? I mean, it's about having a view that comes from a conceptual conceptual ideas, things we talked about in these days, that people, these concepts that we think about, we reflect on them until they become really deep inside ourselves. It's our view. I mean, our paradigm. We already have this paradigm, the way we relate to the world. So what we normally do is, we listen, we reflect, and we familiarize ourselves with these concepts, by studying, reading, listening to teachings. So we do this kind of brainwashing, repeating, and at a certain point something's going to come in. But this is the way it works. It's not because we are Westerners that we don't need to repeat so often. You go to the monastery. They're morning from the morning to night. They're there, repeating, doing it just hundreds of thousands of times, so that these ideas can get in. So that first point is the view, and here we could talk about it a lot too. But what's important, that we need to direct ourselves and we need to direct ourselves in a virtuous way, a coherent view of our reality. And the second is conduct, because I can have a beautiful view but have an incoherent behavior, conduct. So, for example, for food, the first point would be to study, what foods are healthy, which ones are bad, study all the recipes and how to cook them, etc. I do a master's degree in healthy cooking, and but then every day I'm eating at McDonald's. This means having a view, a conceptual view, but having an incoherent conduct. It's not because you have a correct view that you have a correct conduct, but the conduct is very, very important. So one puts effort into developing a correct view, and then effort in making the conduct coherent with the view. So the conduct is about how I speak, how I how it's the conduct of body, speech, and mind. Morality is important. What I should do, what I should avoid. The part of conduct is also about, it's what one does, in between session. Let's say, when one is working, one is talking to friends or is having fun. Even here, one is still familiarizing himself. I mean, the practice of Dharma is there too. And here we need to apply the correct conduct there. Have a lifestyle that is coherent with our worldview. And the third point is about this is how am I able to do all of this? Because I'm made up of habits. All of us were made up of habits. Shantideva, the Bodhisattva Charavatara, says there is nothing that is not easy once you're used to it. What do I need to do? I need to get used to something. I need to create positive habits, familiarize myself. How do I do this? By repeating. And here we use the word familiarization, translated often and not so well as meditation, because the word meditation in Italian and also in English, the idea that comes, like if I say meditate on love, what does meditate on? If we say meditate on love, we think reflect on love, and someone says, okay, what is love? And after 3 seconds, okay, I understand what love is. Reflect. Instead, the word in Tibetan, gom, it's a word in Tibetan, and literally means to familiarize yourself, to get used to. So if I say familiarize yourself with love, how can I familiarize myself with love? I generate a state of love within myself. This is what meditating on love means. It's not about reflecting on the meaning, but it means generating an inner state that doesn't come naturally or spontaneously, but it's sincere. So artificially, I generate a state, a positive a state. Let's say, and then I familiarize myself with that state of consciousness. One of the first ones to generate, for example, is impermanence. So conceptually, we know that we should die, right? So if I were to ask any of you, are you mortal or immortal in this body? The answer is I'm mortal. Does anyone have any doubt about this? No. So great. So now, but how do I live my life? In the awareness of my own mortality, or as if I were immortal within my mortality? As if I were immortal. Every once in a while, it makes me smile when I hear people, if I were to die, every once in a while, you hear people say, excuse me, but what alternative do you have? If one day I'm no longer here, but what alternative do you have? None of us has an alternative different from that. But even if we know that we're mortal, we live as if we were immortal. So, and in the end, this conditions inevitably our way of living in so many ways. I mean, what does it mean to live in the awareness of our own mortality? It doesn't mean living in fear, but it means giving the right value to everything every day. Because if I'm aware of my own mortality and I'm in peace with my own mortality and not in conflict, if I am in conflict only if I have an expectation to be immortal, but instead for me, if it's something natural and I'm at peace with my own mortality and I live with total awareness of this mortality daily, the consequence is that I give value to every moment of life, and I review all of my priorities. So it's said that a Buddhist practitioner should reflect on death once a day, or even 3 times a day. Of course, we're talking about one's own death, and not the death of other people. I've seen people try to do this, imagine their own death and car accidents, but no, it's not about reflecting on your own death. It's about reflecting on your mortality. How can I reflect on my own mortality, and why do I do it? Why should I do it? Because one of the important qualities to develop is our own certainty of having to die and the uncertainty of when, because this gives us a particular strength to be able to practice the spiritual path and helps us change our priorities and give value to things. So for this, one meditates and familiarizes themselves with one's mortality. It's not spontaneous, but one artificially induces this awareness of one's own mortality. How does he do it? So you reflect. Okay, I was born. Everyone who has been born. Everyone who was born eventually died. It's going to happen to me too. Every day that goes on, I get closer. I don't know when it's going to happen, and we do this whole path until we feel deep inside ourselves that we're going to die, and we don't know when. When we can feel that and we get goosebumps, at that point, then you should stay in that state of awareness, and by doing that, we are familiarizing ourselves with our own state of mortality. And even if fear comes, it's good, because you're feeling that it's something real. And then the next step would be, I shouldn't be fearful of dying, because death is simply the continuity, where there's no longer this body, but when we continue in a different way. And if I live my life incoherently, then I should have no fear, because so I can die without fear. I can die without fear of death. There are the 5 opposing powers. There are things to do to not have fear at the time of death. And the best thing is to live well, live life well, live the present well. When one is fine with oneself and lives life well, one is not afraid of dying. But before resolving the fear of dying, we need to resolve this non-awareness of having to die. We need to prepare ourselves for this. Rinpoche, for example, he always acted in total awareness of his own mortality without fear. I remember once he told me that when he came to the West at the beginning, it's like at the beginning of the early 80s, and he had spent a year in Switzerland, and he did lots of healing ceremonies and pujas, and he helped people who wanted to quit smoking and lots of healing practices. It was working well, and he received offerings from people. And every week or every 2 weeks, I think it was every week, he would separate. He would take out the money he needed to live, and everything in excess he sent to India to his masters by mail. So to Trisha Rinpoche, to Ling Rinpoche, and to Song Rinpoche, the various masters, he would send these offerings. And why did he do it every week? Rinpoche said, because I didn't know if I was going to be alive the following week, and so I didn't want to risk wasting that money. I wanted to put it to good use. And before even traveling, he would send the money on before him, because he said, if I die along the way, I want that money to be used well. He was very practical. I mean, it's not because he was fearful, but he was just preparing. So the first thing is we need to artificially generate this certainty of our mortality. When that feeling, that sincere feeling comes, then we stay there. And like that, we are meditating on the certainty of our own mortality. And in the same way, you can meditate on the preciousness of this life, or on love, an infinite number of things. But it's about generating a virtuous state of consciousness, even if it's not spontaneous. We generate it in an artificial way through reason, through the directioning of our thoughts, and we stay in that state for a certain amount of time, and that way we familiarize ourselves. For example, if there's someone who, let's take our father or our mother. In Buddhism, often we talk about how important it is to have gratitude towards our own parents, and often there are conflictual relationships towards our own parents, and I've heard people say, "Oh, fine, but with what they did to me, I'm supposed to now thank them." And there are lots of ways and methods to generate the gratitude, starting from, for example, if someone helps us today, or someone helps us in 20 years' time, or 20 years ago, or so someone helped us 20 years ago, or someone helps us today, should we have a different amount or different level of gratitude towards them? No, it should be the same. If someone helps us when we don't need that much help, like, for example, if I have a lot of food and someone gives me an apple, I say thank you. But if someone brings me an apple when I don't have any food, then I give it a lot more worth. When we're born to this world, without someone taking care of us, we would not have survived. I mean, many of you are mothers. You know how difficult it is to take care of a newborn. I've seen also fathers. And so how much energy did our mother or father have to dedicate to us so that we were able to survive and grow and be here today? I mean, so much, Some people say, well, they wanted to have me. I mean, it's not, but independently of this, I mean, did they give me food when I was not able to eat by myself? Were they able to protect me when I wasn't able to do it myself? So just for this, we should have a little bit of gratitude. Just starting there, one thing at a time. So one starts to observe these objects of gratitude and feel that, and have that feeling of gratitude. And remember, like the Brazilian proverb, one thing is one thing, another thing is another thing. The fact that you helped me doesn't take away interactions that harmed me, and the fact that there's some things that harm me doesn't take away the positive things. So I need to connect myself with the things that helped me, and I connect myself with this feeling of gratitude, and I gradually generate this feeling within myself, because I need that. It's what I need. This is one example, that is something that just doesn't come spontaneously, but one thinks about it, reflects on it, and gradually can generate this feeling of gratitude. This is meditating on gratitude towards our parents, for example. So the process of meditating is fundamental in our lives, because we're made up of habits, and we're not going to spontaneously change our way of thinking and being, but we need to start. We need to do it artificially, and so that they eventually become spontaneous. When we do the self-healing practice, for example, this morning we did it with the recitation of the mantras without the description. But if I go, for example, to my heart chakra, and I imagine that all my anger and hatred and resentment and patience, nervousness and aggression, and all of that goes out and in the form of snakes and dark smoke and dirt. And then I visualize that I receive blue lights and nectar that revitalize. So I develop inside myself love and patience and compassion, stability, spontaneous joy, etc. What am I doing? I am giving a message to myself that I do not identify myself with anger. Instead, I identify myself with gratitude and love and stability, etc. So with that, I'm already giving myself this message. And the more I'm able to identify myself with this, the more I'll be able to generate this on a spontaneous level, in a spontaneous way. So the process is to repeat it different time. I mean, again and again, and identify ourselves with what we want to be and not what we are. If we were to summarize, we need to live and act according to what we want to be and not what we already are. I don't know if that difference is clear. We should act and speak and interact, body, speech, and mind, according to what we want to become, to what we want to be, because then gradually I will become that, and not with what I already am. We have this modern idea, you should accept me for what I am. I mean, this is the way I am. I'm made like this. I say I have to accept you for who you are, but you don't need to accept yourself for what you are. In the sense, I welcome myself. I am loving towards myself, but I don't need to accept what I am. I can expect more. And gradually I can develop the qualities that I want, with love towards myself, with affection and joy. Even with a good faith in oneself and high self-esteem, that, as Shantideva says in Bodhisattva Charavatara, as talking about himself, He says, I have my, you know, I have my gurus. I have my high self-esteem. I have all the blessings of the Buddhas, etc. So you anger. What are you in front of all of this that I have? So we have these 4 questions in our lives. In our life, what is suffering? In other words, what do I want to avoid? Why do I suffer? What is happiness, and what do I need to do to be happy and not suffer? And what we need to do to be happy and not suffer is to direct our conduct and our view and direct ourselves to a positive conduct, positive view, a body, speech, and mind. We don't need to become Buddhists, and Buddhism is a tool. The last thing I want is if it were like this, it wouldn't be bad. But I have no desire to live in a Buddhist world, or that or have Buddhism be the world religion. What I want is to live in a world where there's more love, more respect, more gratitude, more coherence, more wisdom. Yes, more satisfaction. This is what's important. The other day I heard something that said, when there are 2 spiritual traditions, there's not the one that's better or worse. There's the one that works better for you. And this is important. This is what's important. It's not that my guru is better than yours. The question is it work for me? Yes, it works for you. Good. And we don't even go into the judgment and which one is right, which one's wrong, which is better or worse. The question is, does this path help me develop more stability, joy, love, more peace? Does it help me really diminish my envy and my anger or not? If it works, then good. If it doesn't, then there's something that needs to be changed. This is the essence in the end. So there are many tools that we could use: images, recitation, visualization, study, philosophy, the part of philosophy. But these are tools to reach this state of this so-called Buddhahood, to this state of satisfaction and respect and peace and wisdom, etc. This of love, to be fine with ourselves and others. So what I invite you is to go back to the beginning, because the path is not linear. It's not even cyclic in the sense that one always gets back to the starting point. It's like a spiral. The path is like a spiral. And one goes and then comes back without being at the same point. One is already higher. So these 4 questions, for example: what is suffering? Why do I suffer? What's happiness? And what should I do to not suffer and to be happy? Many times we need to come back to these 4 questions, and every time we'll see that we have a deeper understanding, a clearer understanding. So that's why we come back to the same point, but in reality we're not in the same point. We're higher. We're higher, deeper. These 2 days to ask yourselves these questions: what is suffering for me? Why do I suffer? What is happiness? And what do I need to do to be happy and to not suffer? And then another, it is boat and goes to, what's important is that we goes beyond the method. So Buddha is beyond the religion. I mean, Buddhism is the tool. It's not an end in of itself. So let's do our final dedications for
Sangye na mandrala kam niryata yami. Dechen kya po lama heroka, dechen tarpa chogi shayene, dechen tab shenge tenyim pochem, dechen yab yon songi da kyunzo. Lo santempe nyenchi sipe Topten de gyudzime kyun yampo Chile drowe mariam pachom Shempen le dre yarpel ngum parate Gonke pa wo pa me tsonam kim Metodu darol moyer kedre Kala çöpe tülge şekşintu Daça dung ve sölde yütsangong Şive koi drowa zum gesu Shiwe songi chödrana warjeb Shiwe tuni chempen jam tseshi Shide sempa chembo nyur chönsho Topten du tsinim po shempenchum Sem che rang rang kam da mungor De gu tsim tse drupwa rinpoche Rime drowe nyenchi nyur jensho Drobwan kyo ni drowe shidertsen Daso nam kya shideten to nyer Chi si drowa ti de tron choto Malep te si kyo shaten zochi Dachare me chishin drupala Lama concho songi tu jindang Che parte son dorce shudense Nam shitin le maye tondro Kewa kundu yanda lama dan Drame cheki pela longche ching Sada lamge yente rabzone Dorje change kopa Nyurto veshoya chancho semcho Rinpoche ma che pa nam che gyurchi che pa nyambra me pa yang kong ne konto pelware shon Simche ne ba chinye ba nyurtu ne le tarkyurachi drove ne ni ma le pa taktu chungwa me bra me nan tu dan denpa dan sanga de ju drupa ye kandro simbo la so pa ninje simdan dengyura chona kuna le dan simdunga ne ba chinye pa teda dagi sonam ge tega gyatso to parashun Qualunque essere malato o sofferente che ci sia, possa essi